I grew up in an NDC home. My dad was and is still a member of the NDC party. So it's almost like a norm. Say we are free. I grew up in an NDC home. My dad was and is still a member of the NDC party. It's NDC. It's almost like a norm. Say what your parents or your household believes in, you are most likely to also believe in that same thing. It's no. The dynamics of governance and the importance of being patriotic and nation building in Indiana. Still, I'm going to pay and this for us. I mean, their agenda and their initiatives and all that they have done in the past and what they are doing now, right? I prefer their way to the MPP's way of doing things. But that doesn't mean say NDC they are and say fata and NDC ABB I can't say because now many be what is right and what is wrong, what must hear and understand the importance of being patriotic and what being a member of a country and not a member of a party in terms of the development of the country and the people in it. What must say? Yeah, it's no say NDC4 led by John Rawlings Mahama. I believe my more videos about it. I'll be condemning or I'm condemning what the president and his government did. If he say and I'm who say or mining punto. I believe say there are proofs and there are videos to that effect. What must say? Yeah, it may pay this year. So me pay. I'm a founder. I have a friend, John Rawlings. John Rawlings. Now me pronounce right because number one we're founder. Number two, so me and I was into this whole cadet thing. What must I was at one point a CEO, commanding officer in our cadet group in our school in my primary and JHS school. What must be called SHS because school armed forces senior in the barracks Burma camp. Right, I joined the cadet over there. So me apart from say John Rawlings, the founder of the NDC. So now it's happening because of military no woman, right? Like now me it's a military thing. And also no, I like this way of doing things. Like he was disciplined, was straight to the point. He won't beat about the bush. And he was one person who he doesn't tolerate nonsense. Me son me kind like make kind books about team and learning about team. I learned say he was one man not on some was the same so or make sure say will punish you accordingly, right? And Rebecca said, well, it shouldn't have like in Pakunkum during the coup and all those things. Yo, I still support that thing and all. I mean the killing of criminals, right? Criminal politicians. I would want to introduce such punishment into our laws. I want to see such punishment in our laws again, right? Where if as a state person, as a person in position of power, say a chose we are on and now a BB which is going to retard the growth and the development of the country and the people in it now. Grievous. I believe say also there's also it's also capable because, for example, Yamau as a minister of roads and transport, Yamau is as a road. Now road no say the man one yan pepe why be busy basa. Now portos are boom. Now say sebe me be madam fu bi et moto so what came no dodgy porto no the question am no wu. Enya wo na wakunu. Enya wo minister of transport. Enya wo na wakunu. It who send the person say ye be who say ye be who say okay scan the man and yes scan nya pepe and all the road pepe. I say also dey fire squad dey ko boat ko kum. Right, because who crap on and yet one person be who greediness and yet papa be who greediness because me kbia madam fu not moto so you no beat the kbia na service na akoye me and ebia madam bi na wote cam na me relative bi na wote cam me ni pe bi na wote cam ebia na nyon kwa na ti cam bon ebia fo kan ni back seat or the question the mom no mawu me ke so bi obi so dey crash ebi so it all greatness into millions of people and thousands of people, hundreds of people are going to die. And they say who signed the panels, they say also hear the coup. What's massive? Yeah. And you know, man, John Rawlings, honestly speaking, I still like, man, I would want to see a leader like him to lead the country. Right? Yeah. And mom said, Mini Yanambe whom the dynamics of this politics and governance and all these things. Me okay. Though say he was disciplined and all that, and he put people in their place and he eliminated criminal politicians and all that. I believe say he could have done more in terms of like the economical development of the people. What must yeah, he could have done more. And I've also learned say under him also so many things also went wrong in terms of the economical aspects of the growth or the development of the country. It's no Mr. Sarasaman of Tuntum Network. I have a video about it, and we are all here to learn and what react to it. I go by the name Niama, and this is Ghana First. Ghana First. If today's your first time coming across this content and you find value with it and you want to support, you can go ahead and hit the subscribe button. You can support by hitting the subscribe button, liking the video and sharing the video, and coming into the comment section and sharing your opinion and your suggestion and be vibing together in the comment section. What must I would want 100 likes on this video, and I would want at least 500 views on this video. So please do remember to share the video after liking and hitting the subscribe button if today's your first time. Let's jump right into today's episode.
Took the time to research on why Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings stayed in power so long in Ghana. My motive for that research was to find more solid reasons why his longevity of stay in office was a mistake for Ghana, and why Ghana should never allow anyone to stay in power that long. It was at this moment I learned that perhaps what I thought I knew about this man wasn't entirely true. I have read this story in the past, but going back in retrospect made me realize that this man wasn't actually a dictator like I was told, because no dictator will ever do what he did. No authoritarian will ever take over power and allow for an election and hand over power to whoever emerges. Try making that make sense. If I were JJ Rawlings.
So I understand why people will tag J. John Rawlings as a dictator, because obviously and definitely a military regime there is some sort of dictatorship. What must I say? Yeah, a military regime there is some sort of dictatorship, because number one, they what's the word? They neutralize the constitution and they don't go about according to the constitution and all that, right? They put the constitution aside, and it's more of like what that military regime says. It's final. Nobody can debate or argue whether we should go this route or go this way. No, whatever they say, whatever initiative and agenda they push on the people or bring to the people, that is it. It's final. So I understand, right? Because obviously it's a military regime, right? It's about power through coup d'etat. Oh, it's no. I understand why people tag him, say he's a dictator. What must I say? Yeah.
Rawlings. If I were in his shoes, a young soldier who had seized power, knowing very well the political turmoil or terrain, the political roller coaster Ghana was going through at the time, will I relinquish that power back to civilians? Ladies and gentlemen, you need to ask yourself that same.
So, some time ago, I've seen videos of a court section where the people who helped John Rawlings do the coup d'etat then, right, in the 90s or the 80s, or right, where these people, from their statement, they were saying that what John Rawlings promised them, I mean the young soldiers, right, what John Rawlings promised them was that he's going to change Ghana for the better, and like he convinced them that there are criminal politicians who are not who don't have the interest of the people at heart, right? And they are stealing from the people. They are doing all sorts of bad things, which is not helping the livelihoods and the well-being of the people to develop or to grow. Ultimately, yeah. So I support the agenda of what's taking power from civilians and what bringing it to a military regime. Like I support, or I still support that thing he did, the coup d'etat he did back then, and I would have loved to see same thing happen in the past government. Honestly speaking, because it got to a point where Charlie, now I be do your con. Now I be do your con. Honestly speaking, now I be do your con. And I don't know if it's lawful to say, or I may be committing a crime to say that. Say about say this government so headed towards what the previous government or the former government headed or were at or headed towards in the latter part of their governance. Now, I would love to see military people to take over. Honestly speaking, because at least say military can take over crap now. Someone will yes crap on bomb and crap. You also okay. Very military regime and very military power. And with military power there, you can't argue or you can't debate or you don't have a say. Oh, but I mean just say in a space where you say democracy, I have a say. Now people are finding ways and means to steal from us, and or more they are stealing from them. So I don't know whether like I can't say they are dumb, number one, or two, they are also ignorant or myopic thinkers, just like they are politicians or these leaders, to allow themselves and even support, throw their support for the people or towards the people who are stealing from them. Oh, yeah, like say we need down here then, yes, yeah. Oh, I would like the situation where I'm powerless, where you are cheating me or you are stealing from me, like I'm powerless, I can absolutely do nothing. But be in a situation where I have the power, but or more I may be fighting for or trying to what better their lives, not for them and for me too. They are rather not supporting me, but rather supporting the people who are stealing from us, which is like basically there's this term which is called what is it? There's this term something syndrome. It's a state, it's a country. Something syndrome, right? Yeah, it seems Ghana, to be specific, we are suffering from that syndrome, right? Where your kidnapper, you fall in love, or you are rather like supporting your kidnapper or the person who is terrorizing your life. You are rather supporting his actions. What must hear?
Same question. You are welcome to our channel. I'm Cyrus. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my personal take on former President of Ghana, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. When I was in primary school, I saw this man on TV a lot. And one time I saw him in person in the barracks. I liked him only because I thought he was handsome, and that was it.
Interesting.
Then I went to secondary school and started paying attention to the news and political discussions on radio especially, and also being taught in class on the events that happened in Ghana from the late 1970s to the late 1980s. And I began quickly to hate on that man.
Interesting.
I blamed him for three things, ladies and gentlemen. The lack of development in Ghana was number one.
It makes sense.
Number two was how he took out people's parents without proper trial.
I would understand.
But most importantly, how most of Ghana's state-owned enterprises collapsed under him.
Interesting.
And all of that, ladies and gentlemen, made me hate the NDC party altogether.
So, I think I've heard somewhere that during his time, most of the state-owned industries and factories collapsed. Right? During his time, I think I've heard somewhere, or seen somewhere say, and with that one, Samika Eliana, he could have done better. Boom. And I don't know, if those industries and factories collapsed and it didn't collapse for the good reasons, then I think he also needs to be punished. He also needs to be punished. If about say it should happen, right? It should happen. But unfortunately for us, it's no more with us. And when he was living our life, the governments, right? The government in power during, like when he was alive, now get so much share. Now all these past presidents and people who have been given power in the past, or people who have been given governmental positions and all that, and they say to me, but now they come what account for whatever they did with the state funds, and the state resources. And if they are not able to account for it, we should punish them. These governments, they are also stealing from the people. They are also being corrupt, and they are also mismanaging state resources and funds. It's where they watch Obiaso. I know already when crap on who money. You see the situation in Ghana, you it's a yen nipan yen it's monfono yen the people is yan swear you know have an see yan question and yan influence your legislation our MPs what to make laws about holding people accountable and punishing them accordingly. And then Ghana yeah anymore Ghana honestly speaking, because if you don't punish the wrongdoers, then people are also encouraged to do wrong because they've seen say I didn't hear crap now obianu or kwakimaso aso twe bia anymore. It's people be encouraged to steal more and mismanage state funds and state resources.
A lot of people don't know I was once upon a time a member of the New Patriotic Party. And I was really involved and actually became a local secretary and a delegate. This is a story we have to get into one of these days. But ladies and gentlemen, I grew up and took interest in research, and I took the time to research on why Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings stayed in power so long in Ghana. My motive for that research was to find more solid reasons why his longevity of stay in office was a mistake for Ghana, and why Ghana should never allow anyone to stay in power that long. But to my surprise, ladies and gentlemen, I discovered something else, something more important than my reason for the research. People of Ghana, after years of my research into why J.J. Rawlings stayed in office for 2 decades, here's what I discovered. I found out that this same J.J. Rawlings had to stay that long. It was essential he stayed that long. And it was this same J.J. Rawlings who made the success of our 4th Republic possible in the first place. Hear me out. He built the foundation that allowed for the continuity of successive governments in Ghana in the 4th Republic. This same J.J. Rawlings, ladies and gentlemen, this is what I also learned. He failed in his first coup attempt, but succeeded in his second, and took over power for only 112 days. That's from June 4th, 1979 to September 24th, 1979. For only 112 days, and handed over power to a democratically elected government. And this incident blew my mind, ladies and gentlemen. It was at this moment I learned that perhaps what I thought I knew about this man wasn't entirely true. I have read this story in the past, but going back in retrospect made me realize that this man wasn't actually a dictator like I was told, because no dictator will ever do what he did. No authoritarian will ever take over power and allow for an election and hand over power to whoever emerges. Try making that.
I understand where people are coming from if they should tag Jerry John Rawlings or a dictator, because obviously and definitely military power there and our military regime there, you can't argue to their agenda or policy or whatever they bring on board. Don't make canon and they find out. Boom. It's no, I understand Ghanaians sentiments, or some Ghanaian sentiments if they say, well, they thought this man was a dictator, right? I understand. And I understand any military regime be about power beyond through a coup. What was true coup? People will tag them or people associate them or their leader to be what? To be a dictator. I understand what must yeah, because it is what it is. What must say? Yeah. But if a military personnel should come to power through maybe voting or through voting or through the electoral this one process in India, you can't call such a person a dictator. What must say? If a military personnel should retire from his position in the military and stand for presidency, you're told us about a year. Won't me target then there say a dictator because of a military personnel? No, right? we can still be in a democratic regime and still have a dictator as like a leader as a dictator in a democratic regime. What must see? Yeah, without that person, like with the person being a civilian and not being the what's in the military and still be a dictator.
Makes sense to yourself, ladies and gentlemen. Ask yourself this: which military authoritarian leader will ever capture power and allow for a general presidential election, which he won't be a part of, in a span of 14 days to proceed? Who will do this? In fact, in how many countries in the world has this ever happened? I ask myself this question, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, Bisano, I learned say John Rawlings, I think one of the cool even or yeah cool even one transfer and chebe and all opinions to say young to oh, it's such a person you can you like you are convinced to believe say in the way he did what he did with good intentions. I mean with the interest of the people at heart. He had the interest of the people at heart and he didn't do it for his own personal gains or reasons. What must yeah.
The more I critically analyzed the events of the 1970s in Ghana, the more I felt disappointed in myself for allowing myself to be misinformed that long.
Okay.
J.J. Rawlings took over power in June 4th, 1979, and in 2 weeks allowed for a presidential election, which he didn't even participate in. And guess what? That election couldn't even produce a president because no candidate secured the 50% plus one of the votes. And so he had to allow for a second round of election.
Okay.
And he was the leader at the time, making sure all of that was organized. Help me here, ladies and gentlemen. How do you end up describing such a person as hating democracy or hating multi-party politics or being a dictator? How do you call him an authoritarian? I'm lost. But it doesn't even end here. Then he oversees a second round of elections, which happens after 21 days of the first round, and all this while he was only a caretaker head of state. Wow. I wonder how many military heads of states will ever allow this to happen under their watch at any point in history. So finally, on the 24th of September 1979, Dr. Hilary Liman, who won in the second round of the election, was sworn in as president of Ghana, which was also supervised by this same J.J. Rawlings. The simple question I asked myself was this: if I were J.J. Rawlings, if I were in his shoes, a young soldier who had seized power, knowing very well the political turmoil or terrain, the political roller coaster Ghana was going through at the time, will I relinquish that power back to civilians? Ladies and gentlemen, you need to ask yourself that same question, because you need to understand that whether J.J. Rawlings and his men would have ever done another coup or not, someone in the military will still have done a coup.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was the most frequent thing happening around that time. A coup d'etat was a major happening in Ghana during that era. This man handed over power and allowed for civilian rule.
And I don't think it was only Ghana during that time. I don't think it was a major happening in only Ghana. I think it was across board. Almost all African countries. Like, it was a thing, it was more of like a norm. Right? Just now, now say the past 5 years, you should have a thing in West Africa where coup d'etat is Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, is it Guinea-Bissau or Guinea? Right? Infa. Oh, what's that past 5 years? So now coup d'etat West Africa. Yeah, during that time, it was a thing. It was a norm, right? It was something as a year and oh, it's I think say and during that time they can't story about during that time, like the whole coup d'etat thing happening in Ghana during that time. I let's say apart from the people, I mean the citizens, the civilians now, J.J. Rawlings a coup d'etat for them, like for their interest. He was also doing same for the military personnel too. I mean the lower ranks. Because let's say during that time, the lower ranks were not treated fairly. in terms of their accommodation, in terms of their payments, their monthly salaries and all that, in terms of their like things they need to what to be effective in their field of work, in their field of job. No more, you know. They were not treated fair. Well, there was more of like a disconnect, right? There was more of like, what's the word? Like now, there was more of like tension, building up. It's, you know, he had to step in, right, and step in terms of for the interest of the people and also for the interest of the lower ranks of the military people during that time. Oh, not bad about to do in oh, it's me still now an American, still I support is that move over here, like the coup d'etat no year during that time. I support everything and whatever I did. But what I think would have done better was economically, the development of the country economically. I think they no I should but no crap on me can maybe say see anytime Biana, especially during this democratic regime time, anytime Biana or make any state appearance in terms of like coming to address the nation. Yes, here to two government work a salary during Corona time. Once an another every week, I think was it every day or every week or Baba addressing the nation. Some of kinds of time, yeah. The same way, John Rawlings during his democratic era, yes, anytime Biana is coming to address the nation or the country or the people, the to government workers salary. And I think that an uncle is a good thing because yo, day in day out, Yama boy the air cost. What must day in day out, Yama boy the air cost to even do such a thing, yo, Charlie, it be nice thing in the right direction.
When he could have simply prevented all of that from happening. And listen to this part of Ghana's history, ladies and gentlemen. From 1960 to 1978, if you exclude J.J. Rawlings' 2 coups in 1979, Ghana experienced 5 recorded coup attempts. The unrecorded ones were not even made public. Out of those 5 coups, 3 were successful and 2 failed. In February of 1966, the coup was successful, which removed Dr. Kwame Nkrumah from office. Then the April coup of 1967 failed. 1972 coup was successful, which brought in Colonel Kutu Echampon. In October 1975, coup failed. In July of 1978, coup was successful. That brought in Lieutenant General Fred Akufo. 2 failed coups, 3 successive coups. This was how rampant coups were happening in Ghana, ladies and gentlemen. And J.J. Rawlings, being a soldier, a young soldier, seeing the trajectory of coups in the country, he knew he had to intervene. And when he intervened, his first coup failed, and the second one succeeded. Then from that time, he took over from Dr. Hilary Liman in his 3rd coup. Ghana no longer saw a successful coup all the way till now. This man may have come in through the window like Captain Ibrahim Traore, which is totally unacceptable. But he ended up being the reason for the success of our 4th Republic. He brought an end to all the recurring coups in the country and ushered Ghana into a multi-party rule because the man J.J. Rawlings already believed in multi-party style of government. You cannot talk me out of these facts, ladies and gentlemen. The man already permitted a multi-party elections in 1979. And so, why will he struggle to repeat it in 1992?
After it was
ladies and gentlemen, that thought brought me to a question I needed an answer to. How about the people who were told he unalived?
How can you call this person a dictator? Right? And I understand where you guys are coming from, but from all what has been said and from all what's happened back then, you can't still stand 10 toes like acquiring the dictator like on and the idea and on the bias or to be imposed onto the people. No.
Without proper trial. How about the businesses he collapsed, including state-run businesses or enterprises? Ladies and gentlemen, the state-run enterprises part is still something I hold over his head. And I'll never get the opportunity to question him on that, including local businesses that he targeted. But when I thought through the issue of the people he supposedly unalived, that brought me to another question which I would love to share with you. And I need your answer to this. What will you do as a leader of any group, be it your community, workplace, or in the religious body you belong to? What will you do when you find out that certain people in that group are actually trying to unalive you to replace you?
You retaliate. You also...
Let me make it more practical. What will you do if you were a president of a country and you found out that a certain group of people in your country are consistently planning on how to remove you from office? What will you do? And be honest with yourself, ladies and gentlemen. This is a question I believe Dr. Kwame Nkrumah should have answered himself to protect himself and keep his government in office. What will you do? You that is watching. Will you drink tea and break bread with them and ask them to rethink their plans or take it easy on you? Will you beg them to stop?
I believe in democracy. What must I really believe in democracy. But I think democracy now, Africa, Ghana to be specific, here practice one in the MY. Honestly speaking, MY, so because it seems like most of the people are ignorant. They don't know what's happening in this whole governance thing, right? Most of them too are just dumb and myopic thinkers and stupid, right? And our politicians, right, count all these traits of the people too, right? But fortunately for them, they have the financial backing, they have the social backing, they have the status and all that, right? And they have some level of education to understand the dynamics. Oh, they are taking advantage of the people's shortcomings to what? To fill up their coffers, to fill up their votes. I mean, by stealing from the people, by mismanaging the people's resources, the country's resources. Oh, and they're taking advantage of the people. People are also being dumb and not most of them or some of them not wanting to learn and understand things for themselves, do their research and understand things for themselves. They are also supporting these people. And the democracy now practice work on but na papa mo die na democracy die the yemo bia ga yaga na nkwa ga yemo be bia any part of this world. So okay ni na we in the group yen dey pese bibi but me feel say yen kwa ni se beboa we so feel say yen kwa ni se beboa. Okay, let's put on the scale pros and cons. The one that beboa more say when dey and the one that a more and see when okay, we are being honest with ourselves. We beboa more than we for trouble we brand and for let's go with this one. Oh, it makes sense. Oh, but Ghana the and Africa, most African countries the and Jimmy Kwa etno about the sana unya obi o discipline kakra obi a on some was asem so. Oh, no better or discipline the people and not only the people, so the criminal politicians for discipline. What must see? No more so take your life, not take your life.
Up or negotiate your faith with them when you actually hold all the powers? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my world of being a critical thinker. Next time before you judge any man of any crime, please first find out the facts and replay the scenarios and ask yourself all the important questions. First, put yourself in the person's shoes and see what you would do in his stead. When you get that done, ladies and gentlemen, then you can go ahead and pass your judgment. This is what I learned from researching on the events of the late 1970s to 80s in Ghana. And after all the facts I've discovered about J.J. Rawlings, I first of all appreciate him for what he did for this country by setting up the foundation on which our Fourth Republic has been stable. Yeah. I appreciate him for that. But this is what I hold against him. I still think he was like Traore. He knew how to seize power and prevent recurring coups, which was a great thing for the future of this country. But he did too little with the same power economically.
Right.
He didn't have the Traore kind of intelligence on how to govern and protect and bring about economic policies that would improve the living standards of the people at the same time. J.J. Rawlings lacked it. And I hope he finds peace wherever he is. My name is Cyrus, and thanks for watching till the end.
Thank you, Mr. Sanan of Tumtum Network. And I also think, apart from Nkrumah, right, apart from Kwame Nkrumah, our first president of the land, I think J.J. Rawlings, from what I've learned, like from our history, from the Ghana's our history books, right, I think J.J. Rawlings is the second best or greatest leader we've ever had in this country. What must I say? I may be wrong. What must I say? This is subjective to me. What must I say? I'm not saying for a fact say is the second greatest, but for coming from the fact and the objective, is the greatest and best leader or president we've had in this country. But for Jerry John Rawlings, the subjective, from what I know and from what I've read from our history books, I think he's the second greatest. What must I say? You can also share your opinion in the comment section, and you can support this video by sharing the video too and liking the video and hitting the subscribe button if today is your first time coming across this content and you find value in it. What must I say? Yeah, I go by the name Nyama, and this is Ghana First. Hope to catch you on the next episode. I'm out.